The world tells you to wait, that waiting is polite, and good things will just come. But if I waited to be invited in, I never would have stood out. If I waited for change to happen, I never would have made a difference. So make the first move. Don't wait to be told your place. Take it. Don't wait for people to find you. Find them. In work, in love, in life. And most of all, don't wait to be given power, because here's what they won't tell you. We already have it.
'Cause I'm a soul survivor, made it through the fire. I started with nothing, I've got nothing to lose.
So can somebody please tell me what I've done wrong in a former life to be up last today? I must have done something wrong, surely. I've got no jokes. I'm not a vegetable samosa. I'm straight. I haven't even got a book. Everyone's got a book. And when I said that right here, oh yes, if I said the word fuck aloud, my mum is going to kill me. Thank you so much for staying around and for being here, what is, I hope, going to be the highlight of a most amazing day. I have learned so much, and I hope just for maybe a few more minutes you'll bear with me, and we will help to bring all of this amazing day together. And I'm also not Serena Williams, by the way. I can't even see over that cord tennis net thing. I'm too short. But I don't know if anyone has seen that advert. Has anyone seen it? No, some people have. It's for a dating app called Bumble, okay? And anyone who does know about Bumble, anyone want to say what's different about it? Yeah? Yeah, women call the first shot. So men and women can join the dating app, but only women can make the first move and approach somebody on the app. So it has an extremely female ethos. It's been going since 2014, and given Serena's very feminist approach and mindset, she's absolutely 100% behind it. And I just wanted to set that as an example and as a tone for the world that we're living in today. Can you imagine that as an application for meeting your future partner going online 10, 15 years ago, with women being the only ones who could make the first move? It just wouldn't have landed. It wouldn't have gone off. And that's just one example of where women are taking more power. Last year, which we all know was the 100-year anniversary of the act in which first gave women the right to vote here in the UK, a record number of women, over, I think it's nearly 120 women, won their elections in the US in the November 2018 midterms. You should have seen the white men's faces. In January 2019, this year, millions of women in southern India joined hand in hand to create a women's wall, stretching more than 600 kilometers in a bid to fight gender discrimination. And I can reel a whole list of things that are happening in the corporate world. One just happened over the weekend with the chief exec of Warner Brothers being ousted. We've had Google, we've had Ted Baker, we've got online petitions, we've got people walking out, taking action, men and women saying, this is not good enough. Equality is a force for good. So this leads us on to the question that I was set today to really allow us to take a pause and to stand back. Are we about to see a Me Too tsunami to hit the boardroom? Or in fact, has it already hit? Yeah, and actually what we're observing and experiencing now is just the start. Because workplace harassment isn't just restricted to Hollywood. And I'll give you some quotes here which are startling. 75% of employees say they've experienced or witnessed harassment and bullying firsthand. And that doesn't mean whether you're within the corridors of power within Westminster, whether you're in a charity or a third sector organization fighting for human rights in some really poor parts of the world, or indeed if you're on the catwalk. This is about so much more than predatory men with power in the film industry. This is about years and years of the way that women and men have had to face inequality. And just this month, actually, at the beginning of the month, a new publication, I love reading about this stuff, and a book called Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. Some of you may have seen it, by Caroline Criado-Priez. She exposed the gender data gaps that exist in our world today. And she gave a couple of examples of where excluding women in areas as diverse as healthcare, parliament, town planning offices, humanitarian disasters are actually killing women. Men are treated as the default human. I'll give you an example, the way they design car seats. The driver's seat in cars is designed for a man. And we know this because when they do the tests, women drivers, female drivers, get hurt more often than not than the men. And that's not because of the driving, okay? No jokes, all right? Remember, this is a serious topic this afternoon, yeah? The seats are designed for male stature. By charities and governments providing food but not fuel and water during the Ebola epidemic in Sierra Leone in 2014, this meant that more women than men had to leave the quarantine areas. So that's why more women than men were dying during that epidemic, because of the fact they were the ones who had to go and get the food. So the gender data bias that we're all observing, reinforcing, and validating is actually not just about treating women unfairly, we're actually dying and killing ourselves unnecessarily as well. So let's just put a bit of reality and a corporate context to this then. Workplace bullying is leading to increased absenteeism in the workplace, to actually nearly £18 billion a year. It leads to greater staff turnover, lower morale, and up to a 52% drop in productivity. And not to mention, I know a lot of us are now concerned about the impact on mental health problems as well. So you would think, you'd expect that equality would be high on the boardroom agenda as a commercial imperative. It's not a nice to have, it's not a people issue, it's a business issue. And I'm not referring here just to examples of inappropriate or sexual misconduct as examples of inequality. I'm referring to how we can build and maintain an inclusive workplace culture where respect, integrity, and trustworthy behavior are valued. An environment where people feel psychologically safe to speak up, to intervene, and to be fearless in their ability to be authentic and honest. So my clarion call this afternoon is that boards and senior leaders need to urgently understand that Me Too is actually just a symptom. It's the tip of a very big iceberg. It's an explicit manifestation of a working environment where mutual respect and valuing difference are missing. And unacceptable behavior is allowed to permeate and become the norm. And you don't need to take my word for it. There's a lot of psychological research that's gone into this, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. And the psychologists called Badilla, Hogan, and Kaiser call this a toxic triangle of factors. And if you can imagine this triangle, at the top you've got the dysfunctional leaders with power, and they see that it's within their right. Yeah, it's my right and my status to use that power. And in the second corner of your triangle, you've got susceptible and vulnerable followers who are fearful of doing anything else, because if they do something, what would be the consequences? And the third part of this toxic triangle is a conducive environment where we collude by walking by and not saying anything. And our ethical blind spots prevail, and reinforced by our inability to enforce any government. So those three factors create a perfect storm for toxic relationships to develop and a culture of anxiety and fear to permeate where we are. So the Me2 campaign is arguably a seismic response to the law's failure to protect women. It is a watershed of today's world. Women have had enough, and they're using their voice, and they are refusing to be victims. In fact, and I know there's a number of people with legal backgrounds in the room, it's a form of civil disobedience. There's no point going and taking it to the law. We're going to take the law into our own hands. And it should be seen as an alarm call, not just for law enforcers, but for every leader of any organization. Because what we are seeing is a culmination of years and years of a lack of trust and respect of each other, of men and women, of years of social injustice and the law's failure to protect women. So what's changed in recent times, and what does this mean for all of us today, sitting here in this room after taking on board all the things we've heard today about humanity, about technology, about values and bias, and the prejudice which we all hold? Well, one of the key things that's changed is actually one of the core themes of today, the rise of technology, particularly social media and sharing platforms, which have given women, as part of the Me Too movement, the access, the opportunity and the tools to stir up a rage. It really has become an emotive tidal wave that has reverberated around the world, leading to a huge wave of online disclosure. Technology has magnified the voices of women into a collective that is being reinforced and accelerated by other factors, such as the demands and expectations on business by wider society. And that's caused this crack to open, this lack of trust between business and society. And we hear about the trust deficit or the crisis in the levels of trustworthiness. Because at the end of the day, do we know that what is being said is actually being done? And are we being spoken to on a level that is worthy of our value and our trust? Behavioral science tells us that engagement is a key factor in I'm talking about women here, their ability to trust. And in the 2019 Edelman Global Trust Barometer earlier this year, it reported that women in the informed public are becoming more and more engaged on societal issues, with technology providing access like never before. And they did a like-on-like comparison. It's a 23 percentage point rise in women getting more engaged and more vocal in societal issues. But the data also told us something really interesting, and that is women are becoming, as they become more and more engaged with news and information, the trust gap with men is closing. So women are trusting men less and less as women become more and more informed about the way the world operates. So could it be, with all the focus on the imbalance of power between men and women, that women are feeling even less represented than ever before, even more disenfranchised, and thus even less trusting? And trust is critical when we talk about building a high-performing culture and one where we feel included and we feel valued. We need to create excitement about being in it together, rather than a fear of losing face. It's about building a we mindset instead of one about me. And this is where technology can act as a double-edged sword. For not only can it act as a platform to drive societal mistrust and disruption, as we're seeing with Me Too, but technology can help by accelerating our ability to trust. This is the irony that we need to understand. In the podcast for the conference today, I noted how there is a trust shift taking place and a new framework is emerging, fueled by the social economic factors that we're experiencing. It's profoundly changing not just how we are trusted in the world, but how we view trust and in whom or what. It's amazing that a number of people now who I talk to, they have found their lifelong partners through a dating app. You know, someone who they're going to spend the rest of their lives with, maybe Bumble, who knows? Yeah, but it's incredible that we're now using technology to find the love of our lives. We share a house with somebody we've never met before. We go and rent a room in their house. I can imagine if I said that to my grandmother, she'd be petrified. I wasn't even allowed to go out the garden, beyond the garden gate without her panicking and thinking I was going to be whisked off by somebody. The way that we are trusting and building relationships with people has completely transformed, and we need to be informed about what we're doing and how we're doing it. The technology is opening up new ways of designing systems that's changing the way that we behave, but there is a health warning, because the technology not only has the power to enrich our lives, it can also lay bare our vulnerabilities and our inherent flaws, including what we've already talked about this afternoon, our biases and our deep-seated beliefs. So what's the opportunity here for us today? The opportunity, and I'm an optimist at heart, I have to be, let's be positive about this, is that we in this room today have the opportunity for us to consider how we can deploy technology in a way that nurtures humanity, that builds our trust and respect, and supports a fearlessness in the workplace that is aligned to a values-driven business and a set of moral principles. When the other 25% of employees in the workplace do not allow themselves to be bystanders of toxic behavior, by walking past those inappropriate conversations, by hearing those words that shouldn't be said, and by their inertia and their non-action, they collude and they reinforce the toxic behavior. Instead, they need to show their humanity and trust in each other through stepping in and stepping out. So we are faced with this paradox in the world that we live in today. As we increasingly turn more and more to technology, and we have to, because of what it's going to offer us, both economically, on a climate basis, and also in terms of all these other things that we've talked about already, as we do that more and more, we are at risk of dehumanizing us at the same time. So what does that actually mean? It means that we need to actually turn the dial on humanizing our businesses. We need to drive inclusion through open and honest debate within our own four walls, not just at work, but at home. And we need to move beyond compliance and rules to embracing human values and ethical principles in day-to-day decision-making. We need to dial up the vigilance. We can't just walk past or close our eyes and close our ears to unacceptable comments or behaviors. Me2 is actually calling us to redress and recalibrate what we value and what we see as fair in the world today. And it's very much connected to truth. There is so much heightened emotion and outrage, and at the same time, there has to be a moving forward through honest and truthful conversation. We need to be brave enough to speak truth to power, to positively promote reasonable goals, rather than just defending or protecting bottom-line results. So I put it to you that we actually need to stop focusing on just progression. Progression's not good enough. That is not going to change the status quo. Instead, we need to focus on driving change by doing things differently. We need to start feeling much more comfortable about the uncomfortable. So we need to ask ourselves and hold the mirror up about what's acceptable and what's not, and challenge those biases and those beliefs and ways of working. And this is for both men and women. I'm not being gender specific here, it's gender agnostic. We all need to reflect on where we have been complicit and where we have been complacent. It requires a level of honesty about our own behavior, which is hard. None of us like it, because we're afraid, because we're going to have to show our true selves. But, and I know this from working with many organizations and from my own life experience, if we don't have the difficult conversations, if we don't walk towards the toxic behavior, then it will take root and it will grow. When rules dominate and controls take precedence over values, we will dehumanize who we are, what we stand for, and the system within which we operate. We won't actually know what doing the right thing means anymore. In a tech-driven world, when we don't stop and question just because a process or a procedure can be automated, should it be, then we know that we have effectively disengaged the design of the technology from the human experience of what it is. And more likely than not, a critical breakdown of trust and respect will become inevitable. So I've taken you on quite a winding journey today, starting off reflecting on the power of Me2 and the power of the change and the disruption and the much-needed discomfort it is bringing to our boardrooms. We need this. It's good for us. And I've connected that with the role of technology in accelerating that change, shifting how and in whom we trust. But we need to think about how we, just by doing nothing, are actually reinforcing and validating that and making it a reality. So I put it to you that you have a choice here, sitting here today. You can either embrace and design the use of technology in a values-based way that will optimize our humanity and unlock trust and respect in who you are and who you work with in your workplace and at home. Or you can run the risk of dehumanizing what we do, how we do it, and for what end, by not taking shared responsibility for the consequences of our decisions and by not placing people at the heart of our decision-making. So let me revisit the exam question of the day. Let me reframe that for you. Are we about to see a Me2 tsunami hit your boardroom? Well, today's world is full of surprises, and I'm lost for words in terms of predicting what's happening tomorrow. But I will leave you with 3 key questions that I'd like you to take away and to reflect and respond. And the first one is about your culture. Is it more about me than we? The second one, is your workplace one where you avoid difficult conversations and you steer clear of discomfort for fear of repercussion or the seemingly futile sense of why bother? And then the third and final one is, what behavior does your organization value and reward through your policies, your processes, and your procedures? Is it about fearlessness or fearfulness? So if you are leaning towards a yes in any of those 3 questions, then arguably, yep, the tidal wave may be well on its way, and you need to get those life jackets. And it may not be the kind of tidal wave that you're expecting. It may not be one of a Me Too nature. But it will be one where a lack of trust, honesty, and responsibility has led to a breakdown of integrity and a sense of betrayal at the deepest level. We have to have honest, difficult conversations about power, about status, about salary and opportunity. We have to give people the freedom to be themselves, to offer ideas and to challenge, and to base this freedom in the values of respect, trust, and equality. So my aspiration today was to inspire you to look beyond the Me Too label as a headline news story. Actually, that's what sells the newspapers, but it's what underlying that is what I would really urge and encourage you to consider. That is just one symptom and one manifestation of a breakdown of trust and respect, but be more curious about why it's happening, about why nobody is speaking up, and about the 25% who are walking past those 75% of people who are being hurt. Why are they not speaking up? What's stopping them? What could you do that could unlock that? Because you have the power to make the difference. You don't need to take it from me, take it from Serena. Don't wait for the power to be given to you, you have it. As leaders of people, of business, but most importantly, we're all human. You have the capacity to shape where you work, the people you work with, the people who look up to you. And you can help to create an environment where people are valued and respected and trusted, where they can flourish and thrive, not just merely survive. So I'll just play you back what Serena said, because it's so powerful, and I'd urge you to think about how you can interpret and translate this into your working world. She said, "The world will tell you that you're not strong enough to play," and she was told that many times. They'll tell you that your story doesn't matter, and we've heard some pretty powerful stories this afternoon and this morning. They'll tell you to dream, but not too big, and to wait to be given power. But here's what the world won't tell you. You don't have to wait for power. You already have it. So, at the end of the most amazing day, all I can say is you've got authority, power, expertise, fantastic sense of humor. The laughter in this room has been amazing. But you have the opportunity to make the first move. So go for it. Thank you.